Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we find ourselves on the eve of free agency. So, folks, 'twas the night before free agency, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even who am I kidding, right? The party appears to have already started. If you didn't get the invite, you're late. Folks, we're not even to the two-day tampering period, but moves are being made. Deals are getting done. We'll discuss the moves from the Lions and around the league that impact the franchise as we set up for the start of what is sure to be a hectic week. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is James Williams, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today for this special edition of Free Agency Eve is Coach Jerry Angers, former Michigan High School Coach of the Year, also Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions. He's also the Scouting and Training Director for Bull Rush Sports. Coach, it's been a jam-packed few days and weekend. There's a lot going on.
Oh, there is, man. It's so cool to all of a sudden you start seeing names popping up with new contracts and guys that are going to be traded and let the fun begin.
For sure. And you know that the extra sunlight we're seeing in Michigan, the warming temperatures, it just adds to that energy, that fuels thing. And my voice is back to full strength. So let's get to this and let's start talking about the moves the Lions have made. They have made some moves. Their first big one that we saw, I believe, was Derrick Barnes, the linebacker. They're bringing him back on a 3-year deal, $25.5 million with $16 million being guaranteed. Coach, what are your thoughts on this move?
Oh, I love it. I'm seeing some negative stuff on the internet as always. Because going back to his 2022 season and mistakes he made. But think about the big pick that he made. Think about him playing 5 different positions. Think about, he's a good football player. He got injured last year because he got cut blocked. And I think it's a steal. I think we got a great piece. We talked last year about how strong our linebacking room was and how much they want to play for each other. And one of the biggest things is I go back to the Wentworth Man of the Year award. When he told a story, when he got the Man of the Year award, he told a story about Derrick Barnes coming up to him on the football field and saying, "I made it." And that story is, and he talked about it the other day on McAfee's show because he had just signed his contract. He did make it. He earned it. He deserves it, and it's a great fit. And I'm glad he's back because long as we stay healthy, that LB room continues to get better.
It does, and Derrick Barnes continues to get better, and we kind of saw him at the beginning of this year becoming the player the Lions had been building him up to become. And we thought he was going to be due for quite the extension this offseason. He did get one. I mean, that's nothing to shake a stick at. 3 years, $25.5 million. But I think some people were expecting that number to be higher had he been completely healthy the whole season and played the entire season. And just to throw a couple other contracts that got put out there, and again, Derrick Barnes might not be in the same category as these guys, but some other linebackers got paid today. Mm-hmm. You got Harold Landry getting the free agent deal, the big one out there. 3 years, $43.5 million from the Patriots. Nick Bolton, I believe it is, staying with Kansas City at 3 years for $45 million. So you're looking at like $15, $14 million a year on those. We're getting Derrick Barnes back again at a different level, coming back from injury, but he's a player on the rise still. And again, like you said, he's a homegrown talent that he's encompassed everything that the Lions are about. We've seen him get better. And I mean, who's going to forget that game clinching interception, right? I mean, that was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And here's the other thing too. I think he could have tested the waters. I mean, it sounds like Campbell and Shepard were having numerous conversations with them to stay here. So I would assume he probably could have got more money on the open market. But I think, he wants to finish unfinished business, and he wants to stay with his brothers. And I think they're a tight group, that linebacking core, and what better way that when your uh, defensive coordinator leaves and your position coach becomes the new D coordinator that knows exactly what he's all about. So great. I think it's a great one for us. And I think it was a money saver. And we got a lot more for the money. That's for sure.
Well, and again, as we talked about before, I was kind of nervous that Aaron Glenn might try and poach him, and say, all right, you've got some competition now for Derrick Barnes' services, and the Lions only have until now one player under contract at the linebacking position after next year, and that's Jack Campbell. Everybody else is a free agent at this point. Alex Anzalone's entering the last year of his contract, and so this is good. It gives you a little bit more stability at that position, and again, Derrick Barnes is a young player on the rise. And so hoping for a full recovery from that injury and that he can work himself right back into where he was at the beginning of 2024, because that was a great spot. And so I guess that was probably the big bang for the Lions so far. Again, free agency hasn't started. This was bringing back a player. The Lions also addressed more spots at the linebacker position. Anthony Pittman brought back for a year, as well as Ezekiel Turner. And Coach, those guys have also done a lot more on special teams traditionally than playing linebacker, even though they both have lined up at linebacker. But what do you see out of these guys?
Well, I think the big thing with Pittman, I think he played special teams 5 or 6 years for us before he left last year for the greener pastures, where the grass is always greener. And now he's back, and it sounds like he got some green. He got a little bit of money out of that. So plus he's a hometown boy. So he's at home, that's the whole thing with that. Turner, I think he was undrafted free agent and just kind of tore it up during camp last year. And they put him on the squad right away. So I think both of those guys, of course, Turner played a ton of specialty team snaps. He played a ton of linebacker last year because of needed, and so you're bringing a guy back that's got got a little bit more on the plate knowledge wise than you would assume at this age, and I think it's going to help move in for us getting rid of Maven. I mean, I think those are kind of some things, and again at a cheaper rate.
For sure. And yes, you're right. Jalen Reeves-Maben was let go. That's a $2 million cap savings, I believe. Mm-hmm. And you need to have some of those depth pieces there because you need them for special teams and in the linebacker room. So makes sense to bring both of those guys back. I'm sure you're going to see some other guys brought back in that room as well. That's the linebacking room. Now let's move up to the area that everybody's been talking about for a long time around here, and that's the defensive line. The Lions have addressed this in the past with some drafting, but it hasn't quite gotten to where it wanted to go. And so there's two moves that have happened so far that have a lot of people talking. Let's talk about them in order. The first one is the Lions are re-signing Marcus Davenport for a 1-year contract worth up to $4.65 million. Coach, Davenport played in 2 games, I believe it was, this past year with the Lions. He has an injury history. What are your thoughts on this move?
I'm happy. We can't deal with any more injuries next year. That's just not going to happen. We just dealt with way too many last year. I think we stacked enough to put in the kitty and say, hey, we had so many injuries last year, we can't have any this year. No, again, yeah, he's had an injury situation, but he is a great football player. I don't want to say great football player, a very, very good football player that could help us tremendously. And I think the biggest thing with that is people miss on the situation is that injury last year. It was a cheap shot, guys. He was locked the guy out and he punched him across the arm and broke his, did something to his elbow. So, these freak accidents got to stop. And it's not a huge, people see the $4.5 million, but they don't see what this could turn into with this $4.5 million. We sign guys all the time and guys get hurt. We don't talk about the guys that got hurt. What about the salaries we paid all those guys last year that got hurt? Nobody talks about that, other than, oh my God, we just signed a guy that only played 2 games for us. We brought him in for a reason. He's got a ton of upside as an athlete. And I just think it's somebody that came to us to help us, and he lost a year, and he's going to be hungry. And we're going to keep continue to bring these hungry people in. And I don't want to do the analogy of basketball, but there was a basketball game on today.
Yeah.
And if you, Tom Izzo, the Uper, Iron Mountain, Michigan guy, Northern Michigan guy, how has he developed and coached his teams for 30 years? He brings in his guys. He's trying to stay away from the portal. Which would be the same thing as us trying to stay away from free agency. And he rides the wave. He rides the wave with the guys that are in his locker room that love and kiss the Spartan, their in the center court when their career is done. And that's what the Lions are all about. And I want to make that analogy because there's got to be a lot of people in the state of Michigan that love Tom Izzo. And I think Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes is doing the exact same thing. Win with the bodies you got in the building that want to be there.
You found a way to work in the Michigan State analogy, didn't you? Nicely done there, Coach. And congratulations on you guys winning the Big Ten in basketball regular season as well. But there's a lot to unpack with Davenport here, okay? Because, a lot of Lions fans are not thrilled about this movement. And from one perspective, I can understand why. He's never played a full season in the NFL. So I get that, and I get the apprehension. And I'm going to make an analogy here. And the analogy you could argue it's not a good analogy because it shows the flaw in this approach. But I'm going to tell you it actually shows why this approach is good. I'm going to say this approach is like the Emmanuel Mosley approach from last year. Okay? We brought Emmanuel Mosley back. And yes, things still did not work out with Emmanuel Mosley in the second year. But here was the difference, right? The first year with Emmanuel Mosley, we wanted him to be like our number 2 defensive back, right? We wanted Marcus Davenport to be our number 2 defensive end. All right. Well, obviously neither of those worked out. When we brought Mosley back, we didn't have him in the pole position or the 2 position or the 3. He was like in the 5 position. So it was a incentive-laden contract with high reward, low risk. And so you could say, yeah, but you need him healthy. And if he's not healthy, he can't play. That is true. But you already said it. He has the potential to be a rather good player. He has a lot of ability. And so I guess here are your 2 options of a player, because I'm happy that I brought Davenport back. But if he's the number 2 defensive end starting on the opposite side of Hutchinson, then I'm not happy, because that can't be the end of the picture. But if you're telling me the 4th best defensive end on our team is Marcus Davenport, I'm telling you I'm very happy, because it's a depth piece. And Coach, you got your option of 2 players, player A or player B. Player A has an ability score of an 8, okay, whatever the heck that means in the world. He has an ability score of an 8, but his durability is in question. He may get you a full season. He might probably get you half a season, maybe 3/4. Or you could have player B, who instead of being an 8, is more like a 4.5 to a 5 in ability. But they'll probably be there the whole season. And this is your number 4 guy on the depth chart. Which player do you want? A, with the higher potential, but there could be there is the injury risk, or B, the guy who usually plays a full season, but he's got, maybe 65% of the ability.
I'm going with the guy that's best for the locker room, the one that can help coach the locker room, and the one that could turn on and all of a sudden make a splash play or 2 or 3 and win football games. Again, you still have that. We can't always live with, oh my God, he's going to get injured again. We don't know. We didn't think Hutch was going to get injured. We didn't think McNeil was going to get injured. And I think the percentages is they're saying the odds of him getting injured again are a lot lower than staying healthy is even higher, because how can this continue to happen to this poor guy? But we don't know. Mosley was the same thing, and hopefully it turns out for the best. But I'm taking Davenport on this one.
So on my end, again, I don't know his entire injury history, but my approach, my viewpoint is, if it's the same injury happening 2 or 3 times, that's a problem. When it's multiple different things, then they're not necessarily related. They could impact each other, But for that, I'm willing to try again. And again, it's up to $4.65 million, right? He's probably got to hit a bunch of things to hit that number. And so, folks, if he's making that much money, he's probably doing something pretty darn good for the Lions. And if it doesn't work out as well, then that number is going to be significantly reduced, and it's not going to hurt your salary cap situation the way you think it would. So, all right. So I like them bringing him back. So you got him and Hutch. We got work to do, and we've got more work to do now, Coach, because Za'Darius Smith is getting released. The defensive end who came over in a trade, I believe it was a 5th-round pick from Cleveland last year, midseason right before the trade deadline, had a nice impact with the Detroit Lions. It's going to save the Lions $11 million this year. He had like a $7 million bonus coming up quite soon. Plus, I also read, if you look in the details of the contract, and this is where James Cook, the senior sports writer, would really know these details well, is that if we kept him for one more year, we would be responsible for some dead cap money the year after because of the fact that we were assuming the rest of his contract. So by cutting him or by releasing him, it absolves us from that part. But Za'Darius Smith was productive in his rotational position with the Lions, Coach. What are your thoughts on this cut right here to a position where we're already thin?
Yeah, I'm sad because of I just like when he came in. I like when he wore the Ben Wallace jersey to come to the game. I think he really loved Detroit. I think you read his quick tweet, I love you, or thank you, Detroit. He's positive. He's a professional. The money savings, we need it. That's something. Now, we're not looking in the big picture here. Maybe he comes back. Maybe we get him in a less of a contract. Maybe he goes out and tests the market. He doesn't get what he thinks he's going to get, and he comes back. I think he loved it here. The other thing is maybe we're using his money to sign a guy named Levi that's already on our team. Okay,
Yeah.
we do have some guys out there that we talked about that we hope that we sign and don't lose. And again, nothing against Za'Darius Smith because he gave us everything he had last year. But the point is, what's in the building? He's one that came into the building, became part of the team, and from what the X tweet he sent out there, he will probably always love the opportunity that he played with the Detroit Lions. So I think it's a good move. As long as we get Levi signed, or maybe they're using it on the free agent market. I don't know. But there's a reason. There's always a reason when Brad Holmes is at work.
Yeah, I mean, Za'Darius Smith, he is up there in age, right? He is 32 years old. He'll be 33 early in the season. But he did have 9 sacks last year between the two teams, between Cleveland and us, 5 for them, 4 for us. He did have a great impact, yes. That Rasheed Wallace jersey he wore, I mean, he just embraced it. He seemed like a great immediate fit for the locker room. But you're right. When you look at all those numbers, the Lions do have to pay some players coming back. And a $5 or $6 million cap hit of dead money as well, that matters next year. And so, yeah, with that goodbye tweet, it sounds like he's gone. It sounds like he's not coming back. But you never know how the story fully ends. And this is a puzzle, right? I mean, this whole free agency, the draft, it's all a puzzle in the offseason. And, Marcus Davenport's a part of that puzzle. Za'Darius Smith getting released is part of that puzzle. Does Za'Darius Smith come back? You brought that up. It doesn't appear to be that thing, but there's things that have happened that didn't appear to be that way in the past. And so you don't fully know how it's going to go. So I'm going to reserve judgment on this until the end. I like the idea of keeping him and having both of them there, but we're going to have to see what happens with that. For right now, he's gone. The Lions have some more money. It could be to bring back Levi, because that Levi Onwuzurike is a vital piece to that defensive line as well. And so we'll have to see what happens. The Lions have, the tampering period starts Monday at noon, and you got the 2 days before free agency starts on Wednesday. But appreciated him being here and his contributions, but I'm not surprised. A lot of people had hinted this might be coming as a cap casualty, and here it is. All right, well, let's take a look at going from the defensive line to the secondary, because that's another area where, hey, we've got Terry and Arnold coming back, But then we got Enos Rakestraw coming back off injury, missed most of his rookie season. And then Amik Robertson got injured at the end of the season, but I believe we signed him. It was either a 2-year or 3-year deal. So we've still got him for 1 to 2 more years. And those are our top 3 guys because Carlton Davis is a free agent. And people are like, we need a lot of help in the secondary. I would say we need some help in the secondary, but this is arguably the best offseason we've had with our secondary since Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, and company have been here. So we saw a thing about Carlton Davis on social media, Coach, and it's looking like Carlton Davis is going to be leaving the Lions. Talk about what you saw on social media and how you're interpreting these things first.
Yeah, I mean, I see that too, and I think he wants to get paid. The first tweet that came out talked about it wasn't going to happen again, and everybody, of course, draw the thing. Oh, the Lions, Lions doing this, Lions doing that. And I read into it, looked into a little bit more. Carlton Davis is upset with himself and his agent from his previous contract that he kind of jumped on it and took it because he felt if he held out, he might lose some money or it might be taken off the table. And so now he's looking at where he stands in the free agent market and he wants to get paid. He wants to make the big money. And again, this is a business. This is his prime time right now for him to make a lot of cash. They make a lot of cash anyways, but of course, I'm not sure how much they need. I mean, I think I could work for what they're working for, half or 10%. But anyways, I agree with them. I agree with them to go out and check it out. I agree to see if somebody's going to throw. He's probably looking at that $18 million. I think he makes 15 now, so he's probably looking to get into that upper echelon with as one of the better corners. Not on the top tier ones, but pretty close to it. And I think the Lions, what the Lions talk about, they're looking at spend about $12 million on a corner. So he's just not a fit for him.
And he's 28 years old. This is going to be that time for him to maximize his earning potential. This is arguably the last big contract he can get. He's coming in healthy. Obviously, he had the broken jaw, but the rest of everything was healthy. So it's not a concern about a knee or an arm or a leg. So this is his opportunity to maximize that earning potential. The Lions did trade a 3rd-round pick for him last year, and I think we wanted to get him re-upped. It just did not happen. He was huge. He was a huge part of this defense. I really was hoping he would be one of the guys we could get back. If it doesn't happen, Coach, I think we need a veteran signed in that secondary. Now, whether it's a starting one or a guy who's going to be your number 3 on your depth chart, I'm not sure. Is Amik Robertson a guy that could start outside for you opposite Terry Arnold and you have Rakestraw working in there? Or, are you bringing in another guy who could be starting? Now, there are some other starters out there, but they're going to cost a good amount of money. And like you said, that $10 to $12 million range is where the Lions are looking. If Carlton Davis is gone, do you feel the Lions need to bring in a veteran at the defensive secondary, or are you kind of feeling like that might not be I don't know. Tell me how you're feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to clear up one more thing too with Carlton Davis. He wants to be here. He said in social media a month or so ago, or maybe a little bit longer, that Dan Campbell is the best coach he's ever played for. And so that, those are the things that we love to hear. Again, it's a business now, and it's not about, just the locker room, and it's a business, and he's got to go out and see if he can make his money. And I hope he gets it. Part of me hopes he doesn't, and he comes back. But yeah, I think we need to go out and find somebody. There's some good names out there. Everybody's talking about Slay. He was an ex-Lion, but he doesn't play press coverage. He doesn't. Is he a run support guy? Would he be great in the locker room? Sure. Would he help out the rookies? Or the second year guys? I want to say the rookies, and then help Amik. Do we sign Iffy again to keep him as that nickel? And then put a Meek out there on the corner and his TA, our number guy. But I do agree. I think, Ward, of course, everybody wants Ward. If we can get him for $12 million, write that check tomorrow. Debo, I think it's a Debo. You got Stevenson, you got Hobbins. So there's some guys out there that could fill that role, and probably other than Ward are going to probably be around that $10, $12 million range. So, go get somebody.
Yeah, and a good friend of mine is a Vikings fan, and he's expecting Byron Murphy to go bye-bye, So there's a lot of teams that are going to lose some big-name players, some high-priced players. And Brad Holmes did say there will be some guys we can't bring back because we can't afford them. Not because we don't want them. And you just said it, right? Carlton Davis wants to be there. But the Lions, I mean, it's a good problem to have, but if you draft well, eventually you got to pay for it, right? It's going to cost you money, but it's better to pay that money to people you know their abilities and you're not taking the risk. I mean, ask the Tennessee Titans how all that free agent pool money worked out last year. It didn't. And so you can bring in a player or two, but it's oftentimes better to get that high-priced contract to somebody in-house. Now, I also think if they're going to spend less money on defensive back, hopefully that means they're going to spend more money on the defensive line because nothing helps a secondary better than less time for that quarterback to pass, right, Coach?
Yes, that's what it's funny because I was going to bring that up with the Za'Darius thing. If you spend a ton of money on the corner position, you not spend a ton of money on the front, but defenses are built around those dirt guys, the guys with the hand in the dirt. That front four, that front three, and then some, sprinkling some blitzing concepts in there. So if you can, we do have some shut down corner. We do have some really good safeties, and we're a lot better off than we were last year at this time. I think last year at this time we wanted everybody to go out and sign a free agent from the Kansas City Chiefs for $48 million a year or whatever he was asking. So and I agree. If you spend that money on the D line, you're going to help your secondary back. If you spend, X amount of dollars, like, 10 million, 12 million to get a veteran corner in, you're going to be able to train those younger guys to be better. He's going to be able to step in and make plays. And then you can still spend money on the defensive line, and I'm going to go back to the Maven thing one more time.
Yeah.
We let Maven go for 1.9 million, 2 million.
Yeah.
We just signed two guys that can do a lot of things that he can do, some positions better for the exact same amount of money. Okay, and that's the thing. You people, and it's probably off a little bit, but my point is, we're doing what we're working that money situation to fill in the pieces, and yeah, we probably are going to try to get a D lineman.
All right. Well, we've talked about the areas that are most in flux based on stuff happening. One name we have not heard anything of is Kevin Zeitler on the offensive line. And, there are some, putting the offensive and defensive line both in there, there are some guys the Detroit Lions have drafted in the last couple of years who, I don't know, their impact hasn't been felt yet, right? And so if you're wondering on the offensive line, well, Christian Mahogany made his impact felt towards the end of the season. But we don't know what we have from Kobe Sorsdal yet. And so on the offensive line, on the defensive line, we've got Mekhi Wingo. We've got Broderick Martin. So those are some guys that we're waiting to see what happens with those guys. And that could impact some things as well. Obviously, I'm not saying we rely on that and we just think that's going to work out. But that could be part of the puzzle. And those are some guys that I'm not ready to rely on yet. And so what I mean by that is, yeah, Christian Mahogany may be good enough to start right now, but I don't want five guys that I'm confident in. I want a sixth guy. I want someone in the depth spot because injuries usually happen. And Kevin Zeitler was a beast for us last year. I really would like to get him back. If we don't, I guess my other option is find a quality starter. It doesn't have to be a high end, but a quality starting guy, because if that offensive line takes a step back, the whole offense takes a step back, and that changes things up. So it'd be real interesting to watch Kevin Zeitler's name and what happens with him. Any last thoughts on the offensive line or Zeitler?
No, I want Zeitler back. I'm hoping, and I hope the Lions want him back, which I'm sure they do. And because I don't care if he's 35 or 40, the dude can still play.
For sure. Well, there are some guys that played for the Lions who have been moved and recently, and they all start with J's. All right. Jonah Jackson, who left the Lions for the Rams, was traded to the Bears, meeting up with Ben Johnson. We may have mentioned this in a previous episode. And then Jamal Williams and Josh Reynolds, a couple more J's, have been released. Jamal Williams released by the Saints. Josh Reynolds released, I believe it was by the Jaguars, who claimed him off waivers after he got released by Denver. during the season. And so those are some former Lions players that, Coach, I think we all would have been happy at that time if they had come back to Detroit for reasonable prices. Jonah Jackson tested the free agent market, got paid, is still getting paid, just doing it with a couple different teams. And, that's okay, though. Kevin Zeitler worked out great for us. Got to see what's going to happen this year. And then, Jamal Williams and Josh Reynolds, some weird things happened around each of them. I think Lions fans wanted each of them back for their roles, but it didn't work out. They've been released. Not sure what's going to happen with them. Any thoughts on any of those guys there, Coach?
Yeah, I mean, good for them. Jonah's jumping around. He went to the Rams. That didn't work out. He ended up not starting. And the Bears signed another guard, and they both play the same spot, same side. So, just saying. But hey, good for them. I'm glad they're making it. The guys that left, they're one of them's getting paid, the other two are not. So, it's a sad, and I wish them all the best, except for the 2 weeks or time they play against the Lions.
For sure. And again, these aren't either guys that I would see coming back to the Lions. I'm not interested in that either. I actually think Tim Patrick was an upgrade over Josh Reynolds in some respects because he brought a different thing to the Lions. I mean, he had to stay healthy and whatnot, but he served that role well. And then Jamal Williams, it'll be interesting at this point to see if he's able to catch on with anybody else around the league. Speaking of around the league, Coach, I mean, we talked a lot about the Lions, but oh my goodness, the rest of the league just seems to be doing all kinds of crazy stuff right now. And a lot of these are affecting the Lions because we play a number of these teams. So let's start with the Devontae Adams move, right? He got released. He's going to the Rams, 2 years, $46 million deal. Lions play the Rams this year. The Rams were pretty decent last year. What are your thoughts on this move?
Well, I mean, that's huge. I memean, that gives him another huge weapon. Not as good as he was 3 years ago, but I think he's pretty hungry. He's moved into definitely a playoff team and a team that's got a shot. Always got a shot at going to the Super Bowl. He's playing with a really good quarterback in Matthew, and I think it's huge for him. I'm not sure. They spending all that money for him, and then they let Cooper Kupp go. So, it's just yeah, it's weird. But again, they think Kupp's not gonna stay healthy, and they got a guy that can stretch the field. But boy, there's two alpha males in one room. It'll be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, immediate impact to the offense there. Replacing Cooper Kupp, Cooper Kupp's expected to be gone due to his contract. He'll be likely cut and then able to sign with anybody. Could sign back with the Rams at a discounted price, but that offense does look to have some great pieces to it. So it's going to make the Rams just that much more formidable, and the Lions do have to travel out there to play them. Another team that's had some movement in the NFC, which the Lions don't actually play this year, but the team has made two moves, and we're talking about the Seattle Seahawks. Move number one, they traded Geno Smith out of the NFC over to the Raiders, I believe it was for a third-round pick, and then they traded DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who the Lions actually do play this year. That's going to be for a second-round pick, apparently with a 5-year deal extension added to Metcalf there. He's going to get paid quite handsomely. So Seattle's got some more draft picks, but got some replacing to do. They're also releasing Tyler Lockett as well. They still have Jackson Smith and Jigba at wide receiver. What do you make of this? Is this like a mini rebuild for Seattle? Now, I know Seattle's supposed to be looking at possibly Sam Darnold and Aaron Rodgers out there, but even though the Lions don't face them, that is a team the Lions are competing against in the NFC if you're looking at, the overall playoff picture.
Yeah, it's definitely a rebuild, and I think they, and again, you get a new coach in there. He's been there 1 year. He's looking at it, he says, he doesn't fit that's not my quarterback. And Metcalf had caused some problems, had some big 15-yard penalties. And I think they just, decided it was time that they get away from that and rebuild and maybe bring in, excuse me, a Sam Darnold and have him for the next, 8 to 10 years. So interesting. Didn't see that one coming, but it's just crazy.
That it is. I did not see those things coming. Makes a lot of sense for the Raiders to do that move to shore up, stabilize that quarterback position, and reunite Geno Smith with the old coach there of Pete Carroll that had him. And so, yeah, in Pittsburgh, I guess we're going to have to figure out who's throwing the ball over there. But they got some receivers, and I do have one coworker who's thrilled about the DK Metcalf move, but still waiting and hoping. He's hoping to see who they get at quarterback, but we will be facing off against the Steelers, and that game will be in Detroit next year as well. So that'll be good to keep an eye on. Coach, there were a couple moves in the AFC that don't really impact the Lions, but trades, money, they do drive the market. So what's one of the ones that jumped out to you?
Well, I think Staley with the Ravens signing Staley 3 year, $60 million. I know the Chiefs were trying to snag him, so they turned around and said, "No way are we giving our best lineman to the Chiefs." So they threw some money up, and I just made note of it because it's another one of those where they're driving the market up. Everybody's got the the new, what is it, $20 million more to spend or something. I don't remember the exact average, and so seeing something like that, it's interesting. It's interesting to see the Ravens because the Chiefs said they were coming after him, and the Ravens said, "No, no, we're throwing a $20 million a year contract at him." I don't know the exact numbers on it, but that was a big sign for them. I was talking to my buddy Willie yesterday in the car, and he was like, "Yes," and I'm like, "What?" He said, we signed Staley back. Thank God. I didn't want to have to go draft another lineman. Actually, they don't even need any linemen because Lamar Jackson is such a great athlete. He can run around and make plays anyways without anybody blocking for him.
Yeah, for sure. And, they needed to do that. So that makes sense. That just drives that market up. Jacksonville, not just getting rid of Josh Reynolds, also getting rid of Christian Kirk, who surprised a lot of people with the contract he got a couple years back, but had a couple seasons for them. The first one was pretty solid, but they traded him to the Houston Texans for, I think, a late round pick of some sort, maybe a 6th or a 7th, but he's heading over there. And I'm sure there will be many more moves on Monday and Tuesday. And then, those moves can become official once Wednesday hits. But Monday at noon, people can start moving and doing whatnot. Money is being shelled out. Coach, we know Brad Holmes doesn't usually shell out money right away. And again, if you want to buy on day 1 or day 2, you've got to be willing to pay the premiums. The day 4, day 5s are usually the better offers. And the Lions have picked up some players in that area. I think the one player we went out and got right away was David Montgomery because we didn't know what Jamal Williams was doing, and we were not going to get worse at running back, and we actually got better, and it's worked out really well. With the money they're shelling out, a couple things. Do you see them making any quick moves, and or what do the Lions still need to do, you think, based on what the roster looks like right now?
Well, I think this free agency is going to determine what they need to do, because they're looking at draft wise. I think they're looking at what they have on their draft board, especially when you're talking D tackles and D ends, rush ends. It's a huge field. And so I see the Lions possibly doing, I think the corner field is starting to get bigger and bigger to where they may be able to pick somebody up late, which aren't going to be starters. Wingo, I think, is another one you're thinking about. You mentioned him. I was high on him last year, and then he got injured. I thought he's got a lot of upside. Are we saving that money to sign Levi? That's the big thing. We got to bring Levi back. We're going to need somebody to fill in for McNeil until he gets back. And so I think they're going to try. My gut feeling is they're building everything in. They're going to try to sign everybody within in the system, and then they're going to start putting those pieces in. I believe they're going to take a shot at DJ Ritter's line mate. I just have a funny, I don't know why this one just feels really weird to me. And I'm hoping, and if they don't, there's enough guys out there that, we can plug and play, and again, they're looking at the Davenport thing as, the second guy. Maybe they'll go get an older guy that him and Davenport can split time, each get 20 reps, 25 reps a game and not 40 and 50, which would take away more chances of him getting injured. So I just, I don't know. I just something's not right. And I'm hoping I'm right. I'm hoping that they're going to make us go after somebody like Amani, but at a different position. And we'll see.
Yeah. No, you're right. The dust hasn't settled yet. I still think the offensive line needs to be addressed, whether it's Zeitler or somebody else.
Mhm.
The defensive line, those are the two spots that I think need to be the focal point. Now, if we do something great in a different spot, you're not going to hear me complain about it, right? If we can bring back a defensive, we need to sign a veteran free agent at defensive back, preferably a starter. But if it's a top tier backup, then that could be okay as well, depending on where they think the other guys are, because Amik Robertson was playing really well towards the end of the season, and Enos Rakestraw was about to take a starting job early in the season before he got hurt. So we took a guy in the first and second round last year at defensive back, and the D-line is deep in the draft, but you got to bring somebody in free agency. And Marcus Davenport, we want him to be the 3 or the 4 guy down that depth chart. We don't want him being the number 2 because there's too much risk involved with that. So we'll have to see what happens with that, Coach.
Yeah, you know what? And here's one thing to think about. Los Angeles Rams defense last year. How many rookies started?
I'm going to say 4.
Well, it could be. Now they had second-year player. The 2 rookies, Frisk, and Verse, had 18 sacks between the 2 of them. Is there somebody that we can get in there? London. I'm just saying, I like that London guy. You know that.
Yeah. Yep. I do know that.
So, yeah, but again, that all kind of fits in that, maybe there's somebody on the board that they're going this, and then they're going to maybe, again, this is fun, man. This is fun watching Brad Holmes and how these pieces are going to come together. They're signing the ones to take away some of the bleeding, and they're going to go after the ones to put the Band-Aid over it.
For sure. So it'll be fun to watch. We were going to wait to do this once free agency started, but so much stuff happened in the last 72 hours that it's like, hey, let's get the free agency eve show together. Let's do that. Another thing that happened this past week was Andy Isaac, a Detroit sports fan, huge sports fan of all Detroit sports, including Michigan State sports, passed away. He battled Hodgkin's lymphoma for, I believe it was a couple of decades. And I never met the guy, saw him on social media multiple times with lots of his posts. I did see in those celebrating his legacy, his life, the rock at Michigan State was even painted, Coach. And they painted that in honor of Andy. And they called Saturday Fatterday. Governor Whitmer actually did something to help honor that as Fatterday, which was a thing of, my understanding was, football or sports and fun and food. And that was his thing on social media, not just sports, but also food. And so did you do anything for #Fatterday?
Well, I did on Fat Tuesday, of course, because it was Lent. So I just kind of carried it over and said, so I ate a whole lot of stuff yesterday as usual. I didn't go out and order anything specific, but made sure I honored him. And it's a great, terrible story. But I'm looking forward to this year because I know he's up there telling Brad Holmes what to do.
Yeah, my daughters had a play, and we hit up that bake sale really hard on Saturday, and we did well. I probably shouldn't tell you how many treats my daughters got, but we had quite a few. So we did participate with Fatterday, and it was really, again, cool to see the outpouring from not just Lions fans. We saw Red Wings, the Pistons, lighting up their scoreboards and doing things. Sports Center even did a story about him. So obviously a person who had a big impact on a lot of people. And so it was really cool to see that shared throughout the week and the weekend as well. Well, folks, that's our show. Thank you for tuning in. Please tell your friends and family about the show. You can find us on social media sites like Instagram and on Twitter at NTSOL Podcast. Also, major streaming platforms, including YouTube. We'd love to hear your thoughts and reviews. Check out more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Until next time, stay gritty, my friends.